Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Raising Ummah. Today we're going to be learning about Palestine by reading a book called The Blessed Olive Trees. Beautiful oval-shaped green olives swayed in the morning breeze. Amina admired them and smiled happily. She walked along the edge of the olive trees on the small farm that her family owned. There were olive trees of all shapes and sizes. Amina loved to climb the big, strong ones, but there were also some smaller trees. She looked at them with pride, remembering how she had helped her father plant and care for them every day. I can't wait to see them grow into big trees full of firm olives, she thought. The breeze carried an almost tangy, sweet smell. Was it the olives? The nearby jasmine flowers? Or maybe the sea far away? I wish I could visit the sea and watch the waves crashing on the shore, Amina sighed. Amina loved the early morning time to herself, to savor the quiet, breathe in fresh air, collect her thoughts, and observe nature waking up. She walked among the trees, touching their big trunks, feeling the rough bark and crevices. As she reached one of the biggest and oldest trees, she climbed up onto a high branch and sat down. Amina lived with her grandpa, grandma, mom, dad, and siblings. Recently, her uncles, aunts, and lots of little cousins had joined them. Although she loved them all, it did seem a bit crowded and hard to find a quiet spot to gather her thoughts. It wasn't always like this. All of them used to live in different areas in Palestine, but now they were all living together because it wasn't safe in the areas where her family used to live. Looking toward the house, she could see Mama coming out holding Grandma, Aunt Halima with a thermos of tea and cups, and Saeed, her older cousin, with a tray of breakfast goodies. Amina got down from the tree and walked over to where Baba had laid out the blanket for all of them to sit. Looking at the wholesome breakfast of piping hot pita bread, hummus, olive oil, creamy labna, olives, honey, pickled vegetables, and falafel made her realize that she was starving. She sat near her mama, taking small bites of the flat bread dipped in hummus and labna. Mama passed her a small cup of thyme tea with sugar cubes. Earthly, minty with some sweetness. Delicious, Amina thought while savoring the warm tea. I can't wait for the harvest season, Amina said. It's my favorite time. Mine too, said Cousin Sauda. I used to wait eagerly for olive harvesting time when I was little, said Mama, taking a sip from her tea. God willing, we will get to the harvest time without trouble, she continued with a sad sigh. Mama closed her eyes and spoke in a low voice. I can still picture the plump, firm olives dangling from the branches. I used to have so much fun climbing the trees and shaking the branches to make the olives fall. Harvest time was always a festive occasion with our families, cousins, friends, and neighbors gathering together. Yes, Grandma said with a sparkle in her eyes. Everyone would be busy with laying out the nuts under the trees, climbing the trees, and shaking out the olives. There would be laughter and chatter in the air, the adults exchanging news about their lives and the younglings playing games and helping the elders. That's right, Aunt Halima chimed in as she sat down to have breakfast with us. We would start early in the morning and work until midday when we'd stop for lunch and prayers, and then continue till just before dusk when it would be hard to see those olives. We would spread out a big blanket and have lunch near the olive trees. I'd feel so happy and never wanted the day to end, continued Aunt Halima. We would all be so exhausted at the end of the day that we'd be asleep as soon as our heads touched the pillows. It used to be such a peaceful, happy sleep without worry. But then again, those were the days, said Uncle Saleh, sounding sad. Slowly, the rest of the family trickled in to have their tea. After breakfast, Amina's Baba helped Grandma walk slowly toward a chair and helped her sit, from where she and Grandpa could enjoy watching the hills and the farm. Baba then headed to the farm with Amina's older cousins. Amina quickly helped Mama with the chores inside the house before going to assist on the farm. As Amina sat on a tree branch one morning, she appreciated the joy of having her family all together. Even though it could feel crowded at times, they still had fun playing games and doing chores together. She had the opportunity to get to know her cousins better and felt a beautiful friendship forming with Haura, who was her age. She understands me, mused Amina. Glancing around the farm, her thoughts turned to her Baba, who seemed worried about something. In fact, all the elders seemed tense recently. Amina thought out loud, "They think we're too young, so I guess they don't want to worry us by telling us much." Amina wished she knew what was happening. She had a feeling that troubled times were coming their way. Haura had told her the invaders had taken over their homes, and that was why they had to leave and stay with Amina. Amina worriedly thought, "What if they come here and do the same? What will we do?" Then, one night, a month before harvesting, Amina woke up in the middle of the night. She thought she heard something, and a strange smell was coming from the open window. She went to look out of the window, and a bright yellow light was coming from the farm. She didn't understand what it could be. Looking closer, she shuddered, realizing it was a fire on their precious farm. She felt scared and ran to Baba Mama's room. "Baba Mama!" Amina screamed breathlessly. "I think the farm is on fire!" Baba and Mama scrambled to their feet quickly and went to look out of the window. Mama screamed, "The trees!" Baba ran out the window while calling out to his brothers, "Saleh, Ibrahim, Sulaiman, come, hurry!" Amina rushed to the window again and took a glimpse. "The olive trees are burning," she cried desperately. She, her mama, and her aunts, who had also woken up due to the noise, grabbed their veils to cover themselves and ran toward the farm. They couldn't get too close to the trees due to the heat and sparks. Amina saw with horror that most of their beloved olive trees were on fire. Baba stood there, unable to move. He was too shocked. The rest of them quickly grabbed buckets and started to fill them with water from the water well. Some of them started dumping the water, and some of them were trying to douse the fire with whatever they could find. It was so hot and smoky and hard to see exactly. They couldn't see the hose. There was hardly any water coming from the pipes because their water source was rationed by the invaders, who had taken control of their main water resources. Those cruel invaders, uninvited tenants, water is for everyone to share, muttered Amina fiercely. After an hour, they finally managed to douse the fire. They all were too exhausted, so they just sat down huddling each other with tears streaming down their faces. Amina was horrified. She couldn't quite believe this was happening. She had heard about others who had suffered such fate, but she never quite thought it would happen to them. It seemed so unreal. "Maybe it's just a nightmare," she whispered to herself. It was almost time for their morning prayers. They went inside to pray their morning prayers and then headed back to the farm, trying to clear out the area and see which trees were completely damaged and which ones could be salvaged, although it seemed like almost all the trees were damaged. Bubba was heartbroken. He had tended to these trees since he was a young boy, and these olive trees took his whole life to grow into a big mature trees bearing lots of olives. This was his livelihood, and now most of it was scorched, burned. The next morning, Amina went to see her trees with a pail of water to water her baby trees. Unfortunately, hardly any had survived, so she just put water around their bases. "I'm so sorry, dear olive trees. It must have been painful to feel the raging heat and flames and parts of you were burnt to bits," cried Amina sorrowfully. tears streaming down her face. Mama came and put an arm around her. These were like your babies. You had taken good care of them. I'm so proud of you, she said sympathetically. Baba also came and sat down beside them. I'm so sorry, my sweet Amina. What they did is cruel and heartless. Trees are supposed to be respected. No one can just cut down or burn trees to destroy them, Baba proclaimed, clearly appalled. Do you know that olive trees are strong and resilient? They are also mentioned in the holy book, God's words, the Quran, Baba continued. With God's help, the trees will overcome and spring back to life, Mama said encouragingly. Baba and Mama got back to helping others, but Amina stayed a little longer near where her little trees once grew. I know you'll bounce back, little olive trees. You're strong, like Mama said, and you're the blessed olive trees to be respected and cared for, whispered Amina with renewed hope in her heart. After a few nights, the elders sat down to discuss things. Baba said the invaders did the same to some farms at the edge of the village, not too far from theirs, and that this was just the beginning. Beginning of what? Amina wondered while going to get some water to drink. This is how they want to squeeze us and take our lands, Ibrahim cried out. The invaders brought bulldozers into our village and kept telling us to go away, and when we stood our ground, they started hurting us. They bulldozed our homes while the people were still inside. In the end, we were forced to move, Uncle Suleiman expressed sadly. Amina shuddered as she heard this. Was this really happening? Where would we go? This is our home, our land, Mama retorted. This is what happens when humans forget their humanity and are gripped by their ugliness within. May God save us from that, said Uncle Saleh. I think we should take the women and children to a safe place, and the men can stay here as long as they can. Uncle Suleiman chimed in. Amina felt a little knot of fear grow inside her. Are we leaving our home? Where will we go? Will we come back? These thoughts were starting to make her very scared. Baba announced that everyone should pack a small bag with just the basic essentials. He and Uncle Ibrahim will take Grandpa and Grandma, the women and children, to a hopefully safe spot. The adults finished discussing, and Amina went to her room and sat on her bed, feeling too anxious to do anything. After a while, there was a knock on the door, and Mama and Aunt Halima came into the room. They hugged the girls and said, We want you to pack a few pairs of clothes, socks, underwear, and other essentials. Try not to make it too heavy, as you will have to carry your own bags. Aunt Halima then handed them backpacks and added, We'll see you downstairs soon. I might never see this room again, Amina thought unhappily. She walked toward the window and looked out. She loved watching the scenery outside, the hills, the lovely jasmines which grew on the side of the house, the olive trees, now mostly burnt. There are so many memories here, she mumbled loudly. Haura came over and hugged Amina. I felt the same way when we had to leave our home, she said. It was so scary. We didn't have much time, so we took what we could and ran. Amina's head was buzzing with so many thoughts and emotions, but she knew she had to hurry. She looked around and saw her small Quran. She opened it to one of her favorite pages, read it, and smiled. Look, Haura, Amina showed her the lines. With difficulty comes ease. If we remember this constantly, we will gain strength from God's words, Amina said. Haura nodded with a smile. Amina packed her Quran, prayer mat, rosary, and her favorite supplication book along with some pictures from the shelf. After some time, they both headed down to the kitchen. Amina's mom gave them some water bottles and food to put in their backpacks. Mama, can we look around the house before we go? Asked Amina. Amina's mom paused, deciding. Okay, but Ismail will come with you and Haura and be back in 10 minutes. Now hurry along, she exclaimed. The three of them grabbed the flashlights that Mama handed them and they hurried outside. Howdah and Ismail followed Amina as she rushed to the area where Baba kept plants and olive saplings. "Let's take a few and pack them in our bags," she instructed the others. She pulled the saplings along with the roots from the pots, brushed out the leftover soil, and wrapped them with newspaper that she had brought along. They all packed some saplings and olive seeds. "We will plant them wherever we go, and with God's help, the seeds will turn into strong olive trees," she told the others. They continued their walk around the house and then quickly went to see the farm. As they approached the area where the baby olive trees once stood, Amina saw some green shoots. "Look! Can you believe it? It's like Mama said. The olive trees are resilient. They're starting to spring back up already. They truly are the blessed olive trees," exclaimed Amina. As Amina and her family started to leave their home, she looked back and said, sniffling softly, "I will come back." She hoped and prayed that her family and home would remain safe.
يا أهل فلسطين شدوا بعضكم، ما ودعتكم رحلة فلسطين، ما ودعتكم. بكتب بدمي حبك يا بلادي، بكتب بدمي، ما بنسى أرضي في قلبي، والله ما بنسى أرضي. القدس لنا والأرض لنا، والله بقوته معنا، وجموع الحقد قد اجتمع، لن تهزمنا لن تهزمنا.